Hi.
Hi.
I'm going to talk about the role of psychedelics in the creative process, in problem solving and spiritual growth, spiritual progress. I'm not a shaman, I'm not an academic, I just have a strong interest in spirituality and in psychedelics. I've been working for a smart shop. It's a shop that sells natural herbs with psychedelic or otherwise psychoactive effects. And I've translated a book by Stanislav Grof, who's a psychiatrist. It's this book, The New Psychology. It's based on about 30 years of research with psychedelics in a variety of clients that used it, not only people with psychological problems, but also artists and people who have an interest in spiritual growth. Something that hasn't really been discussed this evening that I want to actually discuss first is what is the psychedelic experience? What do you experience when you have such a trip or religious experience? And to do that, I first have to explain what is ordinary consciousness, or the normal state of consciousness. We all have a consciousness that is primarily focused on survival. That is the basis. In order to survive in this world, we have to be attuned to time and space. You have to be able to, make a judgment about how far you are from certain objects or enemies or prey if you want to hunt, and also time. You have to make calculations in your mind. So generally, our whole system and our whole evolution has brought us to the point where we're normally very focused on time and space, and on we have a certain concept of ourselves, identity, which is pretty much related to our body. We're in society, or like if you're living in a cultural setting, you're also very much attuned to psychological factors and social factors, like what do people think of me, what are the rules of society, what are the rules of culture, and what is expected of me, these kind of things. And there's all kinds of different people in our social environment, and we relate to each person or to each group in a different way. And psychologists, they have described this as the persona, or the mask that we have on. And for each interaction we have a slightly different mask. And another thing that's pretty much related to the ordinary state of consciousness is that we have all kinds of defense systems, psychological defense systems, and also towards ourselves. If we feel not so certain about ourselves, or if we have experienced some traumatic experiences, we tend to push these things away, especially when we're interacting with other people. We try to show them our confident side, and in general we try to impress people with being very secure and certain of ourselves. When you take a psychedelic, all these kind of evolutionary benefits are kind of dissolved. For example, when you take a high dose of psychedelics, the boundaries of time and space, they dissolve. It seems like 1 second or 1 minute is like a whole day. You cannot really put your finger on it. You look at a clock, for example, and it's 10:30, and then you have a whole inner experience and whole adventure. And then you look at the clock again, and only a few seconds have passed. That's really weird, but it happens quite a lot. So one advice, if you ever take a psychedelic, do not look at the clock. Just put it somewhere aside, because it's just a useless distraction. Similarly, the boundaries of self and world, they kind of dissolve. Many people, they experience a kind of unity consciousness. They become one with for example, with the people around them. They feel really connected, but it may also be that they feel really connected with the entire human race. And in some very exceptional states of mind, you may even identify with the whole galaxy, for example, all boundaries may dissolve and disappear. Also cultural boundaries, for example, what does society expect of you, and what is the role that you have to play in this world. These kind of things, they become meaningless in a psychedelic state, and often afterwards as well, which could be seen, for example, with the hippie movement. A lot of young people who didn't give a damn about what their parents and society expected of them. They just did their own thing. When it comes to creativity, there's a couple of qualities about the psychedelic experience that are beneficial for creative expression, and others that are kind of distracting. And that's why, despite a lot, well, not a lot of research, but some research that has been done, at least 5 pilot studies on the matter of creativity and problem solving, is that it's not a really predictable drug for creativity. When researchers first encountered LSD, they didn't really know what to do with it. It has been explained already, or discussed, that when the Sandoz laboratories, they discovered LSD, they knew it was a very psychoactive substance. It radically altered consciousness. But how to employ them in a kind of practical way, they didn't know. They just knew that it's a very strong psychoactive substance. So then they started experimenting, and they started trying to figure out what kind of experiments can we do. And one of the things that they discovered is that there was a similarity between the psychedelic experience and problem solving or creative breakthroughs. Many scientists, because I'm not just talking about artists like painters and musicians, but also scientists or designers or people who have to work on some kind of problem to make to find a solution for the problem. Problem solving involves also a kind of altered state of mind. When you just apply linear thinking and a very sober consciousness to solve problems, it doesn't always work. It may work in some ways, but often, and this has been, there are many examples from history where researchers or scientists or inventors have been working on a problem for weeks or months or even years. And the solution then suddenly comes when they're sitting in the bathtub or just sitting in a field and an apple falls down and hey, gravity, eureka moment. And that's quite similar to what may happen during a peak experience on psychedelics, including mushrooms. So they started to investigate this, and they ran into a couple of problems because when the participants were asked to do kind of certain tests to see if their creativity had improved, many of them didn't really feel like doing these kind of mundane exercises or like an IQ test. Who wants to do kind of A or B when you're floating through the cosmos? So. But still, it was clear that there was some potential, and for example, your whole kind of your imagination is increased, and you get all this kind of visual imagery that can be really useful. But on the other hand, you can be totally spaced out and distracted by all that, and so you cannot really focus on your problem. You can also kind of work with kind of concepts and paradoxes and all kinds of combine ideas and do things creatively in a completely new way as you normally wouldn't have done. This is really beneficial for creating something completely new. On the other hand, you may not really have any control over all these kind of connections that you make, so you may get really distracted. So one thing that the researchers noticed is that it helps if you just first let the participants, trip out for a couple of hours, and then, when they're a little bit through that process, then you present them with the problem that they had been working on for a couple of months. And they discovered that many people actually made amazing breakthroughs, and often just in a matter of half an hour, 45 minutes, they solved problems, and they discovered things, and they developed things that were just completely unique, and that actually had practical applications. some even in the military, and furniture designers, and there's all kinds of examples that you can find in the literature of successful creative solutions. But like I said, it's an unpredictable drug, and it's an unpredictable experience, because it also has many psychoactive but also psychological effects. When you take mushrooms, or when you take LSD or mescaline or any of the other classical psychedelics, you may be suddenly going back into your childhood, and thinking about some kind of thing that happened to you, a kind of traumatic experience. Or you may even go further back and experience your own birth, the traumatic birth process. Some people, they may feel that they're going back to previous lives, and when you're in such a state and having such amazing experiences, you don't feel like working on some kind of puzzle, or on your problem. It may be too mundane. But again, there is potential there, and it's just a matter of not really expecting anything during a certain stage of the process, but rather just, well, one thing that can be done is kind of adjusting the set and the setting, and this has been discussed already, the set and the setting. One aspect of that is that that the environment during which you're tripping, and also the kind of things you're doing or listening to, strongly influence the result of your experience. And by making certain adjustments, you can actually increase the positive effects, kind of diminish the negative effects like the distraction and so on. Now, outside the scientific setting, we definitely know that psychedelics have had a major impact on modern culture, and the whole art movement, and music especially. If you go to a record store or look at the records of your parents or your own CDs, many, or most of the musicians have had some kind of drug-related experiences. You can see, for example, with the Beatles, up until the moment that they used LSD, their music was pretty simple. It was just playing chords and singing "I Love You" and very simple songs with mostly lyrics and not too much musical diversions. After they took LSD, much more instrumental, much more experimental lyrics, and really different kind of dimensions they took their music in. And you can see this also in many other areas. For example, the whole computer revolution has been, to a large extent, due to hippies and computer geeks experimenting with LSD and finding new kinds of applications. Steve Jobs, for example, he was in the news recently quite a bit, and he also mentioned that LSD played a significant role in everything that he developed. Also, the people who were developing virtual reality, they were also very much acting upon ideas that they had gathered during psychedelic experiences. But that's all very nice, and but again, if you are an artist and you want to have an inspiration, you could try it, but don't expect too much from it, because you may actually get a totally different thing that you had expected or that you wanted. For example, like a deeply emotional experience or transformative experience. And actually, the spiritual applications of these psychedelics are much more interesting than just finding new kind of innovations and creative expressions. And I'm actually glad that none of the other speakers have really